Darryn Peterson is the top guard in the 2026 NBA draft class. I'm so excited for his game and what he's going to bring to Kansas, as is Bill Self, who had some high praise for Darryn Peterson. In fact, calling him the best recruit Kansas has landed since Bill Self got there. Of course, the Jayhawks have been highly competitive. They've been a great program in college hoops for a while now under Bill Self. But Darryn Peterson is like that. A huge, big, long, positional sized guard at 6'5" with lead guard talent, lead guard upside, an impressive 6'10" wingspan, a solid frame already with more to build onto, almost at 200 pounds. And coming in as a true freshman, born in Canton, Ohio, went to high school at Prolific Prep. In today's video, we're going to jump into some of that high school film, take a look at what makes Darryn Peterson so special, and give you a little bit of an introduction for what to watch for when he is spending his freshman season with the Kansas Jayhawks on a very talented roster and as the lead guy, the lead scoring option, the lead ball handler, the lead decision maker for the Jayhawks this upcoming year. I think the best place to start is his handle and the finishing game, and I think it's a real dichotomy between these two things. These two skills specifically for Darryn Peterson go together, and you watch throughout the film, watch these hezzies, watch the crossovers, the change of direction, and the change of pace, and how that puts him at advantage to get downhill. Prolific Prep, they gave him a great runway to get NBA-esque experience, and what I mean by that is giving him opportunities to spam high ball screens, attack mismatches, get certain defenders up on him, and then also spacing off of him. You look at the wide spacing here on the court. You got a guy down in the dunker spot. This is very professional styled spacing in basketball, and I think Prolific Prep really set Darryn Peterson up for success, not only with the way that they played with him having the ball in his hands, but the way they spaced off of him and the way that they leaned on him. I think that experience is going to be very beneficial for him. It reminds me a bit of how Montverde Academy really ushered in that development for Cooper Flagg throughout his high school career. He became an eventual #1 pick, and Darryn Peterson is definitely in the running for that kind of honor as well. But the 2026 draft doesn't have just one, it doesn't have just two. It has three special talents at the top, but Darryn Peterson, with his ability to handle, carve out space, find areas and avenues downhill as a driver of the basketball. I love, again, the change of direction, change of pace. Look at the gather here and the floater. He's got a good blend of touch and downhill juice. Here he comes off of a little pistol action, gets all the way to the rim in the McDonald's All-American game. And you see the functional athleticism that he has as well as a guard with long arms. If you just take a second and look at his arms, you can see how long they are. I'll try and get it here on a pause for you too. He just looks like an NBA athlete. He's an awesome downhill player. When he has open space in front of him, he takes advantage of that. Can functionally play above the rim. You're seeing a bunch of clips in transition here in the McDonald's All-American game. Now, that's not the exact kind of options and value he's going to bring every single night in the NBA. It's hard to get a ton of transition opportunities, but he makes himself useful on the offensive glass. You've seen a few putbacks. There's another great example of his functional downhill leaping ability off of 2 feet. Here he is turning the corner on a ball screen, able to get all the way to the rim and finish with an and one. And then here you can see some of his bursts too. When he makes up his mind and just goes, he's able to get to certain spots on the floor. And in addition to just the power finishing and the handle, he's got some creative footwork that really adds to everything that you're seeing in these clips as well. This one's one of my favorite, a nice little Pinoy step to open up that driving line for himself and ultimately getting the finish. Here he is with an early gather, a hang, and finish. The handle, the finishing tools, the skill is all so impressive. And I think Darryn Peterson, again, at the heart of his game, you're seeing this guy who's going to be able to change direction, change pace, get defenders off balance, get them up on their toes a little bit, back on their heels, and get to certain spots on the floor pretty consistently. And I think as he continues to progress and develop, especially as a jump shooter, as a scorer, this is a guy who definitely is going to warrant top 3 value in a loaded draft class this year. And I think if you're a Kansas Jayhawks fan, you've got to be so excited about what this kid's going to bring to your program. And I think all of those skills add into what's going to make him a star in the NBA. I expect him to have an elite free throw rate this upcoming year at Kansas. Now, I did just handpick 2 clips that I wanted to show you here of him drawing fouls. This one specifically in the McDonald's All-American game. Gets a switch here, and look at him attack. This is where he just puts his foot in the dirt and goes. And I think this kind of balance, that kind of crossover to draw a foul on Boozer there and get to the line is an impressive kind of assertion on what he's going to be able to do in the college game, where you bring up bigs, you're going to try and test them out in space, and his ability to take advantage of that, get his hips by a guy, and then draw fouls, get to the line as a result is going to be very good. Here he is in the triple threat. This is another example of his footwork. Gets a guy off balance here with a nice jab and then pump fake. And then from there, doesn't waste any time and goes with a little bit of a Shai Gilgeous, Luka Doncic kind of rip through James Harden-esque a little bit with that arm. I'll go back just a little bit so you can see it again here. After the jab step, there's the pump fake. And now watch his left arm. He hooks up to get the Lehigh defender's arm caught. And as a result, he's going to the free throw line. Now, some people might not like that. They're going to say, oh, I don't want to watch that in the NBA, this, that, and the other thing. If your team ultimately lands him, though, you're going to be excited for him getting some free points at the free throw line night in, night out. He's going to be very good at getting to the stripe, and I expect that to stay true for Kansas. And then he's also got some big-time shot-making talent. That was a huge one that ultimately led to an overtime game for Prolific Prep versus Lehigh. Here he is in the McDonald's All-American game. This is exactly what you see, and you want to see. Taking up space, getting to the mid-range. We saw in the playoffs this past year for Oklahoma City with J-Dub and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander how valuable mid-range shot making is for a half-court offense. This is the in-between game that is almost impossible to take away from teams. And if you have guys who can make these kinds of shots, here he is on a very smooth catch-and-shoot opportunity for Phenom. Here he is again in the McDonald's All-American game on a catch-and-shoot. I love when he gets his feet set and he's able to kind of take his time a little bit when he holds his follow through. I do think he has the makings of someone who can be a very, very good shooter. I think he's got a ton of shooting talent. When he sets his feet, gets that wide base underneath of him and elevates, he's going to be very, very tough to stop. And even some of his misses, you'll see a couple misses here. What I want to point back to, I mentioned the handle earlier and how it applies to his finishing. I want to point out how it leads to some shot-making opportunities. Here he is with a decisive change of direction. Now he's sizing up his man and then goes into a 1-2 hezzy pull-up. And I think that specifically is where you're going to be able to get extra advantage as a scorer in the half court. He's comfortable in isolation because of his ability to break down defenders, create looks. Now he doesn't get this shot to go, but if you go through the process, and again, that's the entire point of scouting, the numbers tell you the results, the eye test tells you the process, and this kind of shot for a soon-to-be star player in the NBA is the exact kind of shot your team wants. A late hand. This is open for a player of Darryn Peterson's caliber. Even when he misses, it's an okay shot that you're going to live with. Now, I do think at times, and this is not to harp on him, this is not to be super negative, but I think it's something to watch for throughout his freshman season at Kansas and see how it all plays out. He is a little prone to some wild misses, and I think some of that stems from his willingness to hold his follow through. And I know that's going to sound crazy, but in these clips where you watch him flick the ball and then not hold his follow through, I think he loses some of his upper half mechanics a little bit with his shoulders not square to the rim. Here in this example, he's kind of off balance on the shot and he doesn't even draw iron. I think you're going to see some of that throughout these clips. I only handpicked a few because, again, I don't want to harp on it too much. But when he's breaking someone down, trying to win, here's another flick, right? Drops his hands immediately. You can argue his shoulders aren't square again here. And the miss just isn't pretty. Now, that one wasn't as bad as the first one, but I do think, just watching him, you watch his shoulders, you watch his upper half, you watch his the flick of his wrist, and if he holds that follow through or not, I do think it has an actual meaningful impact on if he's making or missing shots. Here's another example where he drops those hands immediately and misses with a pretty alarming hard miss off the rim. So I do think for him, you're going to want to see him kind of hone in and dial in the consistency of that jump shot mechanic, especially the upper half. I love his elevation. I do think if you're looking at even these misses, if you're trying to find something positive in them, you're looking at the elevation that he gets right here. Look at his ability to elevate over the top of the defenses. And I think if you tighten up some of the upper half mechanics to go with those lower half awesome components of his jump shot, you're going to be able to turn him into an awesome player offensively. And a reason for that, he's going to get labeled as a combo guard. He's going to get labeled as a shooting guard. He'll get labeled at times as a point guard. Very clearly, easily to define, he is a lead guard. And I really think that's the vocabulary we need to use for Darryn Peterson. He's a player you're going to put the ball in his hands, whether it's a Luka Doncic, an Anthony Edwards, a Jason Tatum. Those are all guys who play quote-unquote different positions in the NBA. Luka's a point guard, Ant's a shooting guard, Jason Tatum's a forward. It doesn't really matter. they're all lead guards. The ball is in their hands a ton. And I think Darryn Peterson's ability to make plays with the ball in his hands as a facilitator is what makes me so confident in him being either a point guard or a lead guard in the NBA. You're going to want him to be running the show, and he throws some nice tight window passes, has some real creativity as a pick and roll ball handler. Again, prolific prep gave him a ton of opportunities to continue growing in that area in his tenure there. A lot of expertise in this area, and you see him throwing some really creative passes here. Low man takes the roll man, and he throws it out to a wide open shooter on a little bit of a lift relocation. Here he is, another high ball screen. Watch the processing. A super aggressive tag help. We got a little bit of a roll and replace, and the corner shooter is wide open. Now ultimately turns down the catch and shoot shot. Shouldn't have, but Darryn Peterson keeps that ball moving when he gets it again, and does ultimately end up with that assist in this possession. It is important to note, assists don't tell the full story of who's a good passer and who's not. There's a lot of times where Darryn Peterson threw great passes for prolific prep that didn't turn into assists, and I think his processing speed, I think his court awareness, court mapping is all very, very good for a young player. Here he is. This is another area that I love of his game. We're going to go back just a little bit to replay this clip. Watch as he gets off the ball early. A little bit of a spring out here in the McDonald's All-American game. Watch him get off the ball, avoid that gap help, and ultimately lead to a wide open shot. No assist in the stat sheet there, but the processing is good. Here he is again, getting off of it early to the corner. Not a three-point shot for some reason here. No assist in the stat sheet, but good processing nonetheless. Here he is, kind of a broken down possession for prolific prep. Ball got batted out to the half-court line. Late shot clock, now he's just working, and you can tell he's just processing the court again, gets off of it early, and it leads to a wide open catch and shoot made three-pointer for his team. Here he is now. This is another area that I really like about his game. As he comes off of this ball screen, watch him engage this big man. He doesn't pick up his dribble there. That is another impressive stuff. He's met with size, and he keeps his handle alive, and then he throws a high touch pass over the top of the defense. Now, are you going to get away with that in the NBA? Probably not. He's going to have to learn which angles, which passes and entry passes especially he can and cannot throw. But luckily, playing for Bill Self, who's one of the best coaches when it comes to throwing entry passes in the entire nation, I think he's going to get coached up right at Kansas. You see him here. This is another example of his touch over the top. And when you have players who throw like high quality passes like this, it just gives me good feel and good vibes that these guys are ahead of the curve a little bit. And I think Darryn Peterson with his processing, here he is with a little bit of a Spain action, gets off the ball early again to a wide open corner. Luhai kept trying to bring a ton of help into the paint and showing a lot of bodies at Peterson and Rollman, and he picked that apart pretty comfortably. Here he is again with another Spain action and a cross-court kick this time as he beats the weak side tag helper. Now it doesn't actually go in the hoop, no assist again, but as you can tell, the processing is very exciting. I do think as a guard too, that plus wingspan and this elite athleticism makes him someone who's going to, at worst, be a defensive impact player. Now, it's hard to shoulder the load in the NBA on both ends of the floor so consistently. Will Darryn Peterson be an all-defense guy? I would probably bet against that. I still think his screen navigation needs a lot of work, but he has showcased his ability to get sticky on the defensive end of the floor, stay in front of guys, and make plays in the passing lanes. You saw him rotating over there as a helper. There he gets a block shot. I think if you're looking for similarities, if you're looking for early player comparisons, there are some real striking similarities between Darryn Peterson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as players. And I think if Darryn Peterson, with his length and size and frame, which is kind of eerily similar to SGA, if he can unlock the offensive components of his game, take further strides forward as a jump shooter in the mid-range area, Darryn Peterson is going to be a strikingly dominant offensive player in the NBA. And of course, I'm not comparing him to the league MVP and finals MVP lightly, but I think with his ability to get active defensively, impact the passing lane, stay involved in plays, and one thing I really love is how he shows his length when he gets beat or kind of gets caught in help position. This is a great example here. I want to go back actually and re-show this one. Watch him as the low man here. He rotates in to help on the drive and immediately shows his arms. Gets his arms up in the air, gets tall, and gets his base ready for contact. Ultimately, no contact comes, but he completely shut off the Luhai big man there on the roll and forces a miss ultimately in that possession for as Luhai does not capitalize on the kick out. Here he is with an incredible snatch block. Like, you're seeing some incredible clips from him. The defensive moments are surreal, And then the other moments where he's just impactful, getting in the lanes, finding ways to impact the ball a bit, force misses. I also think he's going to be a very good positional rebounder. That's another thing that's going to add some value to Darryn Peterson's profile as a draft prospect. His size, his ability to get on the glass a bit as a guard. This is an all-around well-impact player. He's going to probably in his career average 5 rebounds a game roughly. You're going to be able to see him averaging 4 or 5 assists very early in his career, maybe even upwards of 6 or 7 at some point down the road, depending on what his team context looks like and what his usage rate looks like early in his NBA career. But this is a high-volume player, a high-volume ball handler, a guy that's going to be not only a cornerstone offensive piece for a team, but a real face of the franchise option for a roster. And that's what makes this draft so specific. You see him there walling up again with an unbelievable block, and then he gets it and goes in transition. He's just an unbelievable player. He can be a little bit gambly at times, but he has the physical tools to make up for it. He covers space and ground in a timely fashion. And I think for Kansas, this is, again, you can understand watching all of this why Bill Self is as high on him as he is. The impact is incredible. Really had some great moments. This is against the Boozer twins, and really showcased to Caden earlier, or in this game a bit, some of the differences in athleticism between the two guys, and just seeing his impact around the basketball, playing as a helper a bit as a guard. And this is where, for Oklahoma City, since they have so many great defenders, they're able to use SGA in an off-ball manner a majority of the time, and I think that's exactly what you'd expect for Darryn Peterson, where he can find impact, look for opportunistic moments to impact the basketball like he just did there. Look at that gather, draws a foul there on Caden Boozer as well. I talked about his ability to get to the line, how adept he is as a ball handler, and how creative he is as a finisher. And I think after watching all of these clips, you're probably saying, yeah, this kid's going to be pretty darn good. Of course, this is an early breakdown. These are high school clips. We're going to get a better feel for all of his strengths and weaknesses as we go through his college season, his freshman year at Kansas. But right now, Darryn Peterson is a lock to be a top 3 pick, has a legitimate chance to hear his name called first overall in 2026 in front of AJ DeBonsa and Cam Boozer. We'll see if that ultimately happens or not, but he's an uber talented scoring dynamo with defensive talent and playmaking juice. Hard to bet against this guy. I'm a huge fan of his game, think he's going to be super awesome. Really excited to watch him with the Jayhawks this year. Hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.